Alright everyone. Enough of the dancing and headbanging. It's back to voice for this video. As you know, I am still deciding which format makes sense going forward. To be honest, voiceovers are not easier to make than my normal music and text format. The reason that I wanted to switch though, was so that I can really elaborate on concepts. I really don't want to bore you by pausing a video for 15 seconds, while you stare at a wall of text on screen. I am aware that there are non-native English viewers out there. But remember, that you can always click CC for English subs. Currently, I am conducting a viewer survey, to help me decide on the preferred format going forward. Please do go to the community tab of my channel, and vote on the poll I have created. After 1 week, this is where things stand. Do remember, every vote counts. So, get clicking folks. Anyways, as you can tell by my channel name, my primary focus is to make grappling videos. As such, for many years, my initial contact with the martial arts community has been with jiu-jitsu practitioners. That being said, these last few videos on Nurmi, Tony and Conor have really opened my eyes to the broader community of the typical combat sports fan. On my Patreon, most of the questions I get are typically from intermediate to advanced grapplers who have technique queries. In other words, they come from the perspective of someone who has undergone some measure of martial arts training. Some of the YouTube comments on the latest Conor video, however, have drawn out perspectives on martial arts I am not sure how to deal with, to be honest. To put things in context. Previously, I made a 4-part study on an elite-level black belt, Adam Wardzinski, and his use of the butterfly guard. Now, Adam has lost several matches before and after these studies. Yet, you will not find in the comments of these videos bare assertions on how his technique is invalid because he had his guard passed or because he lost to another grappler. People who train realize the point of these studies is to highlight precisely what is going on in a grappling match. The validity of the techniques in a match is what matters fundamentally. And the audience I have been used to watches these videos primarily to better themselves as a grappler. At least that's what I like to think anyways. On the other hand, the YouTube comments in the Conor study are full of comments invalidating his technique, and the video in general, through strange rationalizations. Listen. I know many feel the moment Conor meets Nurmi, he is going to get mauled against the fence. And that the only thing stopping this, is Dana White trying to cling on to his golden goose. That frustration, however, is totally separate from the mechanics of fighting. Getting worked up doesn't change the fact that these anti-wrestling tactics are being employed by Conor. Despite the toxic comments though, there were several points raised that were worthy of addressing. Rather than make a follow-up study, I figured I would make this an interactive one based on your observations. However, so as not to alienate my new audience, I will use footage that might be more relatable, in order to make my points. You'll see what I mean in a moment. One of the most common rebuttals is the Nurmi is something comment. That something is a variety of things. Like an animal, a freak, a master grappler, a different kind of wrestler, not any regular wrestler, a far talented wrestler, on another level, totally different level, whole different level. This idea that Nurmi is this unstoppable force that will walk through anything is a fiction. Like any sane experienced fighter, he understands that he can be knocked out, and typically approaches his opponents cautiously. In most of his fights, he tends to wait till he has herded you close to the fence before making his move. It is very rare for him to shoot in the open, as he knows he might not be able to drive you all the way to the fence. His charging against Barbosa was a sudden change to his tactics, and while effective can backfire. Even without going into Conor's left hand, reckless lunging could result in you running into a strike. Being on the wrong end of a collision like that will put out anyone, even the wrestling animal that Nurmi is. Being a better wrestler has no correlation to your chin, at least as far as I can tell. This idea that Nurmi will charge and just heat strikes till he gets a takedown or clinch, seems unlikely. A more interesting observation is that the framing Conor was doing was not foolproof. Indeed, he was taken down several times by Chad during their fight. And that is significant. Now, as I mentioned in the study, this method isn't perfect. A normal response with your arm is to try and downblock. This allows you to pummel an underhook to defend the takedown. By choosing to post on the shoulder or neck once someone enters the pocket, you lose the ability to dig the underhook if you miss. You thus need to be very vigilant when employing this tactic and constantly manage the distance. The first time, Chad bent over deep at the waist and ran towards Conor, trusting that his drive would be powerful enough to close the gap. He also shot out in the open, and caught Conor off guard. Conor missed the shoulder post and got taken down. The second time, Conor was too aggressive and got sloppy with looking for the post. Chad again shot with his back to the fence, trusting his drive. The third time, Chad again shot low with his back to the cage and used his drive to get the finish. Again Conor, by not using down blocking, had no choice but to take the full force of Chad's drive. I tend to think of these takedowns as Conor losing his discipline, once he thought he had Chad cornered, and Chad getting creative with his shots. I would imagine Conor would be more cautious with his distance and aggression against Nurmi. Shooting into the open like this needs a lot of power, and if Nurmi wants to use this tactic against Conor, he will have to make sure he doesn't burn out with too many failed attempts. Lunging with your back to the cage also means Conor will have ample space to pivot out and counter with his left if you miss. This also needs Conor to be aggressively leading and stepping in. Nurmi can't maintain the status quo of Conor walking him in circles and pot-shotting. He will have to somehow either hope Conor gets sloppy and wanders close to the fence, or find a way to cut him off so that he can shoot or clinch. However, he can't assume he can drop his head and run at Conor eating anything till he gets to Conor's legs. Remember, while it doesn't look like Nurmi will be facing Conor anytime soon, this is a crazy situation with the title, and anything can happen. Alrighty. There are several other points in the comments that I want to address, but I'll do that in another video. Till next time.